to our Sabbath Rest Committee Town Hall meeting. Town Hall is a new concept for me, not in terms of generally, but I've not been in churches that did Town Hall, so this is kind of a new and fun experience. Over the past several months, our committee, which is composed of George and Debbie Kiefer, Shalom Lane, Anna Minnick, Bill Zepp, myself, Priya Linnick, and of course Pastor Gabe, have been meeting together to begin to plan and envision the time for Pastor Gabe's sabbatical and our congregational Sabbath rest, looking at all different aspects of what need to be considered and thinking of some things we'd love to do if we can. But it's not something that this small group can or wants to do by ourselves. We want the whole congregation to be involved. And this is where you come in kind of beginning today. And we're going to take a time to look at what rest and renewal means for all of us here at Beaver Creek Church of the Brethren. We want to learn from, dream together, support each other, moving toward this special time, which is way off in 2027, but we'll be here before we know it. Some things that have been happening that you're aware of or not so much. We know Pastor Gabe has been preaching a number of sermons, in my opinion, excellent and very helpful sermons. What does Sabbath mean? What's it all about? What's the origin? What does it mean for God's people? We're nearing the end of our 10-week study, and our author is here on the stage, Angela Smith, which is a great pleasure. God's call to peace. Sabbath. God's call to peace. Last Sunday at just about this time, our committee met with Pastor Gabe to engage in what is called the Fairness Committee. It was a time of sitting with him, asking questions to help him think about what are his deepest desires. What would Sabbath rest mean for him? How would it restore him, re-energize him, give him new vision for ministry among us? And this afternoon, here and now, we will have time to begin to share your ideas. There's some questions on your table, some little cards if things come up that you would like to ask the panel later. And also, Gabe, is there a place for them to put responses on the paper that we thought we might collect? Is that how this turned out?
Yes, there's enough blank space on each page. There's one question per page. So just popcorn whatever answers you might have for each of those questions on that particular page. And if you have larger questions that might emerge, larger questions about sabbatical for Beaver Creek, you can write them on the note card and put them in the box. If they don't particularly pertain to this, it'll be a good way for the committee to collect your thoughts.
Yeah, they will be collected, and we will be looking at them and working with them. There'll be time for meeting with our panelists. There'll be 4 panelists here who've had different kinds of experience working with Sabbath. And we want to hear from those different viewpoints, what wisdom, what guidance, what cautions they might want to offer to Beaver Creek. As we said, there'll be time for questions. And when all that's over, there's homemade ice cream and goodies waiting for us. So as we've been hearing, there are many aspects to God's gift of Sabbath. It offers rest, renewal, and especially a deepening relationship with God. As Angela Feinert has written in our Bible study book on Sabbath, Sabbath is not just a day off. It is rooted in a covenantal relationship with God. It is a regular reminder of that our identity comes from who and whose we are, and not what we do. Sabbath calls us to place our trust in an ever-present, faithful, and loving God. And as we begin to move in the afternoon, I invite us for a few moments of Sabbath rest together. We'll begin with a brief time of silence, and then I will offer a few words and ask that you would repeat them after me. And then we'll move into a rhythm of silence, spoken word, silence, and then a closing prayer. So let's move into this time of silence in the presence of one another and of God. God, abide in me as I abide in you.
God, abide in me as I abide in you.
God, abide in me as I abide in you.
God, abide in me as I abide in you.
God, abide in me as I abide in you.
God, abide in me as I abide in you.
God, abide in us as we abide in you.
God, abide in us as we abide in you.
God, abide in us as we abide in you.
God, abide in us as we abide in you.
God, abide in us as we abide in you.
God, abide in us as we abide in you.
Loving God, in whom we live and move and have our very being, we give thanks for your presence in us and among us. Guide us in this time of sharing, listening, and learning as we seek to know more fully who you are calling us to be. In Christ's name, amen. Okay. Okay, we have some time then to turn to the questions on the paper on your table to do some sharing.
And one of those kids are going to be heavily enough to sit on.
See how long we have.
If you're strong
Yeah.
enough.
What are ways that you grow closer to God?
Just jot them down. It's a good way for us to listen to what you guys are thinking. But I wanted to introduce our panel. I'm really excited that we've had a good response from people who are supportive and excited to share about their experience with sabbatical. So on your far right, we have Tom Ricard, who is pastor at the French Church of the Brother. And we know each other way back on the Eastern Shore, I guess, when I used to live on the Eastern Shore. And yeah, so glad to have you here. Jamie Nickel is their leadership team chairperson and moderator and bell choir director and choir director and sabbatical cheerleader. So she can answer questions from not a pastoral view, but from a leadership point of view and a congregational point of view. Prue is going to be kind of herding the cats, as you know. She'll be asking some questions and she'll be moderating for us. Angela Finette is a pastor at the Mountville Church of the Brethren in Pennsylvania and also the author of our Bible study, Covenant Bible study that we've been doing. So thank you for coming. And Kim McDowell is, well, she's many people to me. Kim is my childhood pastor, and she officiated my wedding and many family funeral services and family, I guess, licenses, ministry licenses, all kinds of things. And but she's a retired pastor from University Park Church of the Brethren, and most recently she was one of the interim district executive minister team members for our district, Mid-Atlantic District. So she kind of offers a point of view from a pastoral perspective, but also from a leadership perspective as she helps some congregations think about sabbatical too. So anyways, we have lots of advice and lots of input here, and I hope that we're able to think about what sabbatical means for Beaver Creek. So.
Thanks, Pastor Gabe. As the committee was envisioning this, we thought we would invite each panel member to share up to 10 minutes. It certainly doesn't need to be that long. Some people feel they'd rather answer questions than just speak off the cuff, but we wanted to give them at least a chance to tell us a little bit about their involvement with Sabbath. And we'll go from there. I do have a clock, but I'm just not going to keep an eye on that unless someone gets really inspired and you need to go home for supper. So
Don't worry.
We thought since some of us, at least here, are familiar with Angela's book, that we would start with Angela and let her share a little bit of what brought her to do this and what brings her here to share with us today.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. So, as Gabe said, I am the pastor at Mountville Church of the Brethren, and I had been in my previous congregation for 6 years in the Noakesville Church, and then moved here. So it had been 10 years, and I had not had a Sabbath yet. So just this last summer, I was eligible because I served 4 years in my current congregation for the smallest amount of Sabbath that you can take. And so I did that. Combined 3 weeks of Sabbath is what the current paper allows after 4 years. A week of continuing education, a week of vacation, and annual conference for a total of 6 weeks away from my congregation. So I bring that experience to you. I did write the book, and part of that came from an article that I wrote in Messenger magazine, I think 2 years ago, about Sabbath. And the reason that I wrote that article is because I am your clergy representative to the Pastoral Compensation and Benefits Advisory Committee, the PCBAC, for the Church of the Brethren. And we as a committee are working on revising the guidelines for Sabbath renewal for pastors. So Sabbath has sort of surrounded and engulfed me for the last 3 or 4 years, I think. And when I took my Sabbath, and I can, if you're interested at some point, explain the nuts and bolts of how we did it for that shorter period of time. But the benefits to me personally were, first of all, I got to worship, and I didn't have to plan it. It was such a blessing, I can't even tell you, to just worship for 6 whole weeks. I got to spend time in prayer, just luxuriating in the presence of God without praying for someone, like, as part of my vocation, right? I just got to be me, Angela the person, not Angela the pastor, spending time with God. And the third thing that was a benefit to me is I got to see family. I don't live anywhere near family. I got to see family members that I hadn't seen since my sister's funeral in 2012. So those things were very beneficial to me. I also took a 1-week trip to Greece with the group from Bethany. We did the journey of Paul. And so when I came back, I preached for 11 weeks on Paul's journey in Greece. They were a very captive audience to my vacation pictures. And it was so altering to the way that I understood Paul that I was able to share with the church, that they literally said to me after only 11 weeks back, "When can we send you again?" So I'm happy to share any of that as we go along.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think next we'll move to my left, to your right, to Pastor Tom and Jamie from Friendship. I always want to say fellowship, but they're close. From the Fellowship Church of the Brethren.
Friendship.
Friendship. I said that. Anyway, I do have these problems sometimes. Pastor Tom had a sabbatical just earlier this year, and I think, as we heard, Jamie was the cheerleader. So we're going to let you guys divide the time up as you want. You can go 10 minutes. I think you're the one who said you prefer questions. So whatever you feel comfortable with sharing with us at this point.
I only preached a little bit this morning. Can we go first? Want me to preach? Okay. All right. Yes. So, not sure exactly what you want to hear or what you're listening for, but I hope this meeting is helpful to you. So I've been pastoring for like 23 years now, and I could have, took a Sabbath rest about 7 or 8 years in at my first church out on the eastern shore of Maryland, in Cordova, Maryland. Did you know that even existed before I mentioned it? I didn't. But it was a wonderful time there. But it was a time when the church probably was getting a little, I don't want to say stale, but they could probably do some other things. I thought I should take a Sabbath rest then, but here's the thing about pastors: they don't like to be away from their congregations for too long. At least myself, I should speak for myself. So, 9 weeks away, you kind of have this guilty feeling if you're a pastor, believe it or not. So I didn't take it. I wish I had taken it. But then a couple years after that, I moved to Westminster, Maryland, and I was at, it's embarrassing, Meadow Branch in Westminster. And I was there for a while, and again, I could have taken another Sabbath rest there, and I did not. And then I came to Friendship, and I've been here 7 years, because that's, if you want to get a full Sabbath Rest, you have to be at one place for 7 years. I think it wasn't quite at 7 at Meadow Branch is why I didn't, I thought you had to like take the full thing after, say you had to be there 7 years and take the full thing, but you could take one before that. But anyway, looking back, I went to the part-time pastor, full-time minister meeting for our pre-district meeting 2 years ago, 2 meetings ago. And that was it's like you get your CEUs at that meeting, continuing education units. So they had this survey on how burnt out you are as a pastor, pretty much kind of thing, and 40 questions, and you answer so many yes and so many no, and I was on the not the go to the hospital right now list, but the one right above that for being burnt out, and I didn't realize that. I mean, I kind of did, heart to heart. One moment. Pause for a moment, please. So I was talking to Richard Worley, who's he's in charge of the part-time thing. He said, "Well, you might really want to think about it." And so I thought about it, and I said, "Well, yeah, I should probably go because I'll be more effective for my church, and I'll be more effective for myself." And so we started working on it, and the church, I mean, it's a denominational opportunity, so they had done a sabbatical before with a different pastor. But I am so glad I went, and my church is just, I can't believe, it's hard for me to process how good they are to me, but they are. And it makes me want to be all the more, much more of a pastor for them, for just one thing. But I could get into some other things, but I'll let Jamie talk a bit.
Now you have me teared up, and now I have to talk. Okay, so I'm Jamie Nichol, and I think when Pastor Tom first came and was talking about Sabbath Rest, I had never really thought about how much a pastor is always on call. And I think I knew it in the back of my mind and I thought about it, but it really brought it to the front that a pastor, you're always, as a church, you're always usually reaching out to your pastor for something. I think different pastors, it might be different things, but I know for Pastor Tom, he's always helping with events. If someone's in the hospital, of course there's a Sunday morning worship. If someone is sick or someone needs a phone call. And so they're just always there for the church. And that is something I think sometimes a pastor needs a break from, to not always be on call. And I think for us as a church, we just got to a place where we were very happy to be able to work together as a church and to help him with this Sabbath Rest. And I think it gave the church a certain amount of joy that we could come together and be a support for Pastor Tom in his Sabbath Rest. And I think there was also the practical side of things, which if you have any more questions about that, maybe I could be helpful with that. One of the things we were a little concerned about was how we were going to fill the pulpit. And Pastor Tom was amazing and found all the preachers that were going to come and fill the pulpit during his Sabbath Rest. We also wondered what we were going to do if there was an emergency situation. And so we had a pastor that was on call if we had an emergency. We only had one the whole time he was gone. And we didn't reach out for small things, but for that one thing we did reach out. It was the pastor at Westminster Church of the Brethren, and it was wonderful. He was there for that. There were a few questions from the congregation about communicating with Pastor Tom. because people were used to doing that. And so, wait, we're not going to talk to him for 8 weeks? This is going to be strange. But the more we talked about it, the more they understood that it was just a little break and it would be okay. I think we only had one person that reached out. So we did pretty well in that regard. And then one thing that hit me as we were planning the Sabbath Rest, at a certain point in the planning, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is so long. Like, how is this going to work? And then, wait, 8 weeks. Actually, that's not that long. And I'm a teacher, so you kind of get off during the summer, and it flies by. And I realized this is kind of just like that summer break, and it's probably going to go by really fast. And after it was all said and done, it did. We missed Pastor Tom because he's very active in the church, but it actually did go by very quickly. Kind of surprised me how quickly it went by. So those are just my initial thoughts on it, and love to answer any questions at some point if you have any.
Okay, I think you began to respond to some of the things on our list and probably some of the things that folks have in mind. So thank you, and we'll get back. Okay. Thank you. Kim, last but certainly not least, with your varied experiences and positions and things, how did you get on involved with Sabbath and what brings you here?
Well, I appreciate being invited to come, and this is the first time I've ever been in the Beaver Creek Church. I really enjoyed worship this morning. I felt so at home here, so thank you for welcoming us. I served on the calling and credentialing ministry team for the district at several different times for extended terms. So that group works with ministers and works with credentialing, but also re-credentialing and at various points, both for licensed and ordained pastors. And so during those years, it was not infrequent that we would hear from pastors or congregations about the struggles that people were having with energy and vision and hopefulness. It's part of what the church in general faces, of course, but for pastors who have been in congregations for a while, that was just a continuing pattern, that there were sort of cycles of energy and ability to be present. And so that was maybe my first exposure to issues around Sabbath Rest. Secondly, I was a long time pastor myself, and it was 25 years of ministry before I took a Sabbath Rest, and it was much needed. I was at that point sort of at a critical time. Was I going to stay in my congregation or leave? And I knew that something needed to be different, and the Sabbath Rest really made the difference for me in that regard. I can say more about that, and then the third thing was being in the role that I was in just for a few years here in the district, as the district executive was changing, and I was one of the team members that filled that position as in the interim position. And so I had a chance to talk with several people who were considering or working on or taking sabbatical Sabbath Rest periods, Tom among them and his congregation. And I could just sense from those who were planning those times much more of the excitement and energy that was there. There were, it took work with the pastor and the congregations, but there was a lot of positive and forward-looking energy in planning these things and then experiencing them in several cases. So when I did it myself, I had done about 5 years of ministry in other places, and then I'd come to University Park, where I was for close to 15 years, or a little more than 15 years, because it was almost 25 altogether before I actually did this. And I was aware of just needing desperately to do something different, and it led us, my congregation and me, to talking about this. and to considering what this might mean for me in terms of retaining my own grounding in my faith, which sometimes you probably, many of you know this, but Sunday is relentless. It comes every week. And there is
Frequent and firm, a deadline.
And you know, it doesn't matter how full of faith you're feeling on that when Sunday comes, you still preach and you still try to share the word, the good news. But sometimes it's a real challenge. And after years and years, I was really feeling that. I was also feeling like I've been at this church for a long time. I know I've done some of the things that I really wanted to do. But are there new things? And so it was that turning point. And yeah, I can talk about logistics too, but maybe I'll pass it back.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. Yes. No.
So the PCBAC sent out a questionnaire to pastors 2 years ago, including retired pastors, and we asked them, have you ever taken a Sabbath rest? And if so, how many years had you served before you got to take one? And we were alarmed at the numbers that came back. Only 23% of our pastors, with the 1,000 of them that we asked, had ever taken one. And the amount of time that they served before they took one, the average was 17 years. I will tell you that I graduated from Bethany Seminary in 2016. I am the only pastor left in ministry from that class because they burned out, partly because of the pandemic, but burnout is very, very real. And so the more that we can bless our pastors with a rhythm of rest, the healthier all of us will be.
Thank you.
Oh, God.
I won't share.
Well, we have some prepared questions, and I think some things have been touched on, but this may just give them a little further time to respond. I call the first questions more of the nuts and bolts of a Sabbath, and then maybe go a little bit deeper into some things. What does it really mean? What are the processes? Discernment, that kind of things. But let's start with some nuts and bolts. And I'm going to say anybody who wants to just jump in as you feel free. And the first one was, what advice do you have for a church that is going to plan the sabbatical for the first time? Please answer that question.
Please answer
that question. You going to tell them, Jamie? Or you want me to?
You go first.
I'm thinking. I would just say that you are already ahead of the game by having a group that's working on raising the questions, doing the study together. You're thinking down the road and you're exploring what it means, not just for the pastor, because it's easy for us to speak from the pastoral perspective, but for your congregation, which I think is every bit as fruitful. So I think you're doing the right things in terms of getting started. And that committee, I will say that in my case, the committee began to kind of pick up some of the immediate questions really quickly. Like, how will we consider hiring somebody to fill in? Will we do this ourselves? What my congregation decided to do was to primarily to handle as a mix of pulpit supply and church members doing things. And so I think it was about, I don't remember now exactly because it was now almost 15 years ago, but 2 Sundays a month, people within the church planned and carried out worship. And sometimes it was preaching, sometimes it was something else like hymn sing, or there was some sharing times, there were some, people spoke, 3 or 4 people speaking to one theme, like, where do you find the greatest source of spiritual sustenance, I think was one of those. And they put together services that actually were some of the best things that happened while I was gone. They really enjoyed it. and they invited some people from the community and some people from other churches to come and preach. And they enjoyed hearing those voices too. I mean, I don't know how it is for you, but hearing myself preach week after week, it's really tiresome sometimes. So, I think a break is really good. So that's just one comment in response to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just we had also people from our congregation that filled the pulpit. We had 3 times during the sabbatical, and it can be neat to hear from people from your congregation. And these were people that normally actually did preach at our church, but the idea of having someone like Kim mentioned, like 3 different people or something, I think that can be a really neat opportunity. It's something we have done in the past, not actually during the sabbatical, but on a topic. It's just kind of neat. You never know maybe what someone's going to share, and sometimes they surprise you, and it's a neat experience. One thing was just, I don't know how much you've gotten into the details yet, because this is definitely in the future for you, but once we kind of started getting things down on paper, I think it made it less scary. Not that it was necessarily scary to start with, but it just seems like this big thing that's out there. And then once we started being, okay, here are the Sundays, here are the ones we need to fill, this is how we're doing it, and this is what we're going to do during that time, and here's who's going to help us out. It just started seeming something that we could handle, instead of just being this, how are we going to do it? Okay, well, this is how we're going to do it. Once we started working through it together. And then, yeah, it was a lot easier once we did that.
And I will say, speaking from the committee, we started putting at least some things down on paper. So it sounds like maybe we're on the right track. Anybody else want to respond?
Well, I can share.
I'm sorry.
So I wrote another book in 2021, the Advent Devotional, which was Do Not Be Afraid. So let me offer that to you. Do not be afraid. So because I moved during the pandemic to this new congregation, and I was at year 6 when I moved. So when I showed up at my very first interview at my current congregation, I said to them, the minute I am eligible for a Sabbath, I'm taking it. So that was written into my very, very first contract. We knew that in the summer of 2025, I was going to take this 6-week break. And so because we knew that, we started budgeting $1,500 every year. We put it in the budget every year, and it rolled over into a designated fund so that by the time the Sabbath rolled around, we had $6,000 for 6 weeks. We actually split that money up. We had a pastor who had recently retired from nearby who didn't want any sort of long commitment or interim or anything, but thought 6 weeks was about right. And what she did was pulpit supply and worship planning. And then we had another person who is a member of our congregation and is studying to maybe one day be a chaplain. And so he took on the visitation portion, the pastoral care portion. So we had 2 people who were regularly identified, and we had that budget to work with. And then we did have another person who was available for if we had a funeral or something like that. One piece of advice I would say to you is, if you do have people that pass during the time, and I want to say this as gently as possible, but saving that until the pastor comes back. I came back to 3 funerals and I was only gone 6 weeks because people waited. It would be really great in your planning if the first week or so, or maybe 2 weeks that your pastor is back, they sort of work sort of part-time to sort of reacclimate themselves, because it's very, very difficult to come back from that and be slammed with, trauma and grief. For some people, they had been waiting for 5 weeks, and so they had started to kind of recover, and then the grief all came back when we started working together. So not only for the pastor, but for the congregation too, depending on how long the Sabbath is, that's tough on everybody. So sort of plant that somewhere in your head that maybe that's not what you wanna do.
Okay, another question we have is how does the pastor prepare the congregation for a sabbatical?
Write a book.
Or study a book.
Yeah.
So maybe, I think our pastor is starting to prepare us.
Yes.
Any other thoughts on that? Little conference up
We
here.
talked.
I think. Yeah, no, I think we talked together and you know, is this gonna happen or not? And my church was like, the church I served was like, well, it's the denomination thing. We're gonna do it for you. And then Jamie and I worked really well together on, getting it, deciding when it was gonna be during the year. Makes a difference for your congregation, maybe. You have certain activities you do every year at the same time, kind of thing. The pastor's away for that. Is that going to be, maybe you can go at a different time and her school schedule and everything, and the different activities you have for some of the children's things around Christmas and Easter. I mean, you can work with each other so it works for both of us at the same time. So we ended up choosing after a certain wedding, someone's sister got married. But and then after that, it was like March and April. It was kind of close to Easter coming back because I came back like 2 weeks before Easter. That was a little rough, but in between, it just worked well for the church, and it worked well for me for that time to take those 8 weeks there. Working together on that, I think, is helpful. It's helpful for me, and also helpful for the congregation also.
Another thing that I think was helpful was to really be honest with each other about what the feelings are around this, because one thing that is true is that there are many people who work really hard in their jobs, and I wish that everybody had this capacity to take sabbaticals, because it really would matter for lots of people. So there was an honest, kind of grappling with, well, why do pastors get this? Academics get sabbaticals because they need time sometimes out of their schedules to study and research and write something new that they can't do in the midst of all their teaching. And so people I think we all kind of understand that. It is also true, though, for pastors who are writing sermons every week and who are looking at trends in church life and trying to think about where the church fits in the culture, that we can get just so caught up in the day-to-day ministry. The things that are going on, we have busy lives in our congregations, and so there's a lot to pay attention to. So that time apart really, really helps. But being honest about that, because some people said, well, I don't see why you should get it when I get it, when I don't get it. And we just really talked about that honestly. But the flip side of that was trying to weigh what are the possible benefits for the congregation. What might the congregation gain from having a pastor absent for a little while and taking on those roles together, or working together to see those filled, and kind of recognizing some of the priorities that are there. And I think my congregation really did feel like they learned a lot, and they were more capable of being active participants in ministry in the congregation. What might they learn, and what might the time away for a pastor offer in terms of coming back? Angela preached a lot of sermons. My sabbatical was enabled in part by the Lilly grants, and because I had been there so long, my sabbatical was 9 weeks. It was the full 9 weeks plus a vacation week and a professional growth week and the annual conference, so it ended up being 12. So they had quite a bit of time to fill. But the Lilly grant that I was a part of, for about a third of that time, some of it was travel time and some of it was planning and processing time, I worked with a small group. And we went on a trip to Italy and Greece, and we had a question that we were studying, and we brought back a whole lot of ideas that then we tried to share, each of us in our own settings. So we had a colleague group, that colleague support was wonderful, and processing, and then, yeah, we all came back together after that was all over and reflected on what had we done, what difference had it made, and we invited our congregations to be a part of that. And I think all of us had really positive feedback from the congregations as well. I'll stop now.
No, that actually, if we can take a little parentheses, I'd like to get back to that then further on. Just a couple more nuts and bolts, and we've already started this a little bit. We talked about how the pastor can prepare the congregation for sabbatical. How does the congregation prepare the pastor? And I think you may have spoken to that a little bit, Jay, but just wondered if what's the congregation? Because I think sometimes we always think somehow sabbatical is the pastor, but how do we help the pastor?
The light's going red, so I think the batteries are on the way out. Is this one working right now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You don't need it.
Okay. You can hear us? Awesome. How does the congregation prepare the pastor? Is that what you're saying? I don't know, I'm trying to wrap my head around the question. I think we helped prepare for Sabbath Rest in the sense, I think I maybe already said it, just kind of coming together to work as a church to make it happen. And I think there was a certain, I don't know, I'm reminded at Christmas, I remember when as a kid, I always loved getting the gifts. But as I got older and now, it's so much more fun to give the gift to others. And so I think there was a feeling of that as we as a congregation were preparing Pastor Tom for that Sabbath Rest, that we were able to give this gift. And in some ways it was kind of fun. You know, I talked about it being, you know, something you're a little bit afraid of or maybe a little bit stressful. But then once we got into it, I think there was also a fun aspect of it too. We're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and he's going to get a break. And speaking to what Kim said about, you know, why do pastors get a Sabbath rest when some other professions don't? I know, I'm sure this isn't the case for all pastors, but I've seen a lot of pastors that are supposed to have a work week that is so many hours long, and we know that it is not that many hours long. It is much, much more than that. And so they're doing overtime all the time, and they're doing it out of love for their congregation, but then when you give that Sabbath rest to them, it's like that gift you can give back to them for everything they've done for the congregation. I'm not sure that quite answered your question, but
it's a beautiful answer.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I could say that being positive with the pastor is a good thing too, because, you know, talking to people, we were able to talk with each other. There wasn't any like animosity or anything like that. It was more like, when are you going? And maybe what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do because it's a Sabbath rest, you know? I'm not going to do anything, but no. That's my attitude at the beginning, as I'm taking this time and just to be by myself. And I'm not a big planner, like 2027, I don't even know when that is right now. That's awesome, you can do that. And the church is good planners. I'm like, if it wasn't for the last minute, nothing would get done person, right? But anyway, so leading up to what we were open with each other on, like supporting each other. They know that I'm going to have the pulpits filled, and I'm gonna have a pastor who's gonna be like an emergency pastor, and you can rely on him because I know him, and some of them knew him also. So that's the other thing is rely on your pastors that are from other churches in the area. They will help you out. They will help. They just, it wasn't like I mentioned it to a couple of people. And, oh yeah, well, I'll preach that Sunday. Kim actually for it too. So the other pastors in the area will help out your church in this time. You just ask. That was made me feel better about leaving my sheep, so to speak, right? So that worked out really well. And then right before I left, the Sunday before I left, these people, they had you know how you get medals at the Olympics? So he comes up, he's got these over his arm, right? And he says, anybody want to come up and say, wish Pastor Tom a good Sabbath time and just tell him, you know, something's done for you over the last 7 years. And that was just awesome. That set a nice tone. I'll just put it that way. Set a nice tone for leaving and set a nice tone for coming back. Well, they did. When I got back, they had all this, they have this thing that I get a little carried away when I talk. You know, say pineapple if I'm too far off the range a little bit. I'll say pineapple. So they got me these, they had a meal when I came back, carrying kind of thing, and they had little pineapple toys or whatever you call them, mementos. So they welcomed me back, and they sent me off well. So that was really nice that they did that. I thought that was really nice.
Sure.
So I kind of wanted to circle back because I just thought of it, about what the pastor can do to help prepare you. So in both when I served in the Mid-Atlantic and also now that I'm in Atlantic Northeast, I did pulpit swaps with my friends that I was in seminary with. And in fact, in the Mid-Atlantic, we did a 5-church pulpit swap. And so the beauty of that is that you get to know the other pastors that are near you. They're not just some name, they're someone that you've interacted with and that you've heard speak, so that when you are gone and someone might come in to fill in for a funeral or something like that, it's not a complete stranger. So that's something that you may want to consider too. That was the only problem in Atlantic Northeast, was that the 3 of us that did this pulpit swap were all on the Greece trip and on sabbatical together. So that didn't work.
Okay, just very briefly, I do want to save a few minutes to talk about the deeper meaning that we referred to, but any other ideas or suggestions either for how to cover for the pastor or what funds were available and how were they allocated? And I know we've talked about that a little bit. Any other input on funding this? I know you mentioned the Lilly grant as one possibility, but there are other ways of funding within the congregation and beyond. Any other input?
I'm not going to speak so much to funding, but when it came to the pastoral care aspects, we too had a neighboring pastor who was on call, a Mennonite church that we partner with, and they're right, 4 blocks away basically. And that, I think there was only one occasion when that person did come in and helped, and it was with a death in the congregation. But with regard to pastoral care generally and visitation, this goes back to what can the pastor do to prepare, and it's not really just the pastor, but it's your committee that's working. Doing some really intentional training with deacons or whomever it is. Maybe it's a group that's just named for the period of time that this is happening. A little bit of training about what can you do to do pastoral care while the pastor is away. That was actually one of the things that people responded very positively to in our congregation. They were worried about it because several people said, well, I'm a deacon and I'm good at love feast prep, and I can sometimes visit people, but if it's a real pastoral care need, if it's something where somebody has a special challenge going on, I'm not sure what I would do. And there was a little bit of training that we did with deacons, and they appreciated that, and they did care for each other really well.
Anyone else? Okay, I know, what does a sabbatical mean for a congregation? I think you touched on that, Kim, and we have in different ways. And I'd just like to kind of mix in some things here and just let response as it comes. But, you know, what does a sabbatical mean for a congregation? Is there a process of discernment and can be helpful in preparing for sabbatical time? Were there discussions about or moments of insight that perhaps helped reveal God's call and intention for the congregation during the pastor's sabbatical? Just kind of those aha moments, or this is what we really would like to see happen. This is where we feel God may be calling us in all of this.
Well, we are commanded. We are commanded to have a regular rhythm of rest and abiding. And if you've been doing the study, you know that it's the 10 Commandment that people are like, But it's the one that God talks about the most. And so one of the things that I really took to heart, there's an old joke, I'm sure you've heard it, where the pastor says, well, the devil doesn't take a day off, so neither do I. And then someone says, well, maybe you're following the wrong model then. And I do think that pastors are not always good models in terms of what abiding in God and being in a good rhythm of rest looks like, because we're not the only ones called to this. We're all called to this. And so I feel like that's part of the preparation, is understanding that this is God's invitation to have a more regular rhythm of abiding with God, but it's also our commitment to one another that we are going to live into that covenant. And it's an opportunity for your pastors to model for you that everything will be okay because God is still here, right?
Anyone else? Are there any questions from you folks? We have a couple minutes probably yet. Yes, Bill.
Yeah, I'd like to canvass the panel and ask, what was the biggest challenge that you felt during the sabbatical process, both the planning and the taking of a sabbatical? And I'd like to hear from everybody.
I think in the planning, I come from a relatively small church, and so just in the very beginning, like, oh, how are we gonna do all this? And then, honestly, Pastor Tom stepped in and took care of some of the, like, finding who was gonna fill the pulpit. We didn't hire someone for the whole time. We had pulpit supply that came in, and so he took some of that pressure off. Once we had some of those big things in place, then, because your question was, what was the biggest challenge? Yeah. So I felt like that was kind of the biggest challenge, just who's going to be here? Who are we going to rely on in his absence? And once that was taken care of, it was kind of a relief and a confidence in that this would move forward well. During the Sabbath rest, honestly, less challenges than I thought they were going to be. Not that I was going in thinking there's going to be all these challenges, but it went really smoothly. So I felt like maybe there were some, you think of all these things in the back of your, maybe the biggest challenge was just thinking there were going to be all these challenges, when if you plan well for it, there might not be. We did have one funeral, and the deacons were amazing and reached out to the pastor that we were relying on to take care of that really well. So
From the pastoral perspective, at least for me, it was, I was really excited about the whole thing, and looked forward to it, but I was also anxious about what would happen while I was away. And I think one of the learnings for me was that I wasn't so indispensable as I thought I was. It was a great learning, really. It needs to be relearned probably, a lot of times. But it was hard for me to let go completely. And this, we've had a couple mentions now of deaths. The last thing that I wanted to do was miss the death of somebody important in our congregation. I did not want to do that after all these years of relationship. And it was fortunate for me that the person who died while I was gone was not a central person, who wasn't, really deep in the life of the church, because that would have been hard. And I understand why some people say, well, okay, we'll postpone it until you come back. But I also understand what Angela was saying, so that was a big challenge for me.
I would just comment on that, because I think for most pastors, not being there for the family when that happens is one of our deepest struggles. But I remember one time I could not be there for someone who I'd known almost all my whole life. And someone said to me, but Prue, you were there for her when she was living and going through her illness. You were there for her then. And there's another one who could step in who also knew her and did the funeral, which really delivered. But that was deeply meaningful for me to put that in a lighter frame. And of course, when we came back, I could visit with the family and follow up. Bill, did that help to anyone else?
Yes, sir, it did.
Any other questions?
I got a follow-up to that one.
Okay, go for it. They're getting things ready in the
I
kitchen.
want to know, what did you find to be the biggest benefit of the sabbatical process? Both the taking of the sabbatical, how did you feel when you came back? How did the church feel when the process was completed? What was the biggest benefit that came out of the whole process of taking a sabbatical?
I think we were excited when Pastor Tom was coming back. Like it was a little strange, because 8 weeks isn't that long, but at the same time, like, oh, he's coming back, and so there's just kind of like this excitement. But then things did just kind of pretty quickly slip back into, in a good way, to, oh yeah, we know Pastor Tom. Like he hasn't turned into a completed person or anything like that. So I think that was just that excitement on his return was a benefit. And then another benefit, our church went through a time a number of years ago where we did not have a regular pastor. We were searching for a pastor, not a lot of pastors available, did some interviews, and we went through a time where we were really having congregational members or pulpit supply for quite a long time. And so when it came up that we were doing this Sabbath Rest, and at first we're like, okay, how's this going to work? Like, wait a minute, we've done this before. Okay, we can pull together and we can do this. And I think that was a benefit as well. Working together to do that, and realizing that you really appreciate your pastor, but you can also pull together and do something without your pastor for a time.
You think so we're doing this this thing that's bubbled up about visioning for things coming up and things we can accomplish moving forward. And part of it is realizing what you just said about how we can do things. We've done them before. Because we're in a kind of, we have a season of declining membership kind of thing going on. I don't know how you all are doing, but a lot of churches are going through that since the vid times. But I think that part of, they're used to doing things with or without the pastor sometimes, you know, so, in a good way I'm saying it. So I think this thing that we've been working on, this visioning thing and things we've done in the past and getting a lot of energy out of people thinking, oh yeah, back a while back we did this and we did that, and what are we going to do now that's going to help us be able to share the gospel with other people in our neighborhood, right? So how's that going to fit together? I think we're like going together into this visioning, I think. So I think that part of the Sabbath Rest might have been part of that. It was for me personally. I finished some things up with God that I need to address and be with God about. And don't really have that time with that. They're gonna want a sermon on Sunday. Sometimes you get caught up in that. And there's other deeper things, but I'll save that for another time. But
I would say for me, the blessing for me was just being a child of God instead of a servant of God for 6 weeks. It's a very different way of engaging with God. And the benefit to the congregation. So one of the things that I say to them all the time, when they come up and say, will you pray for me about blah, 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 I will say, I will pray with you. Are you praying about that? Right? And I was surprised at how many people, when I came back, said to me, there were so many times I wanted to call you and ask you to pray for something, and then I remembered you would say, well, you can pray about that. And that's good. That's good that people are exercising their own faith and communication with God outside of, including me in that.
I've been an attender at the Song and Story Fest, which is something that Honors Peace puts on in the denomination along with others every summer. And it is a week of, it's camp, family camp basically, but it's storytelling and music. And it's one of the places where I am filled. And so our project that we took on when we did this trip was to look at story and image as openings for the Spirit. And so we went to a lot of, Gabe asked me earlier what I did, and we went to a whole lot of museums in Italy and sites, classical sites and mythological sites, and we talked about stories and what they mean and how they interact with the scriptural story, and really entered into this engagement with art in a new way. And so that was stuff that I brought back and was able to share with the congregation pretty regularly for the time thereafter. But for me, it was the experience of sabbatical was one of just being filled in a way that sometimes just doesn't happen day to day.
Anything else?
Nice time. Come on.
We don't want to have to answer all these questions after you leave. Well, I feel this has been rich. Thank you for being here with us, and for you who have been here and shared in this. And I hope it's prompted questions and ideas. And I think of Julian of Norwich, who said, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And I trust that as we abide in God, and God abides in us, and we move through these months of planning and praying and getting excited that God will be with us. So thanks to everybody, and I think there's some ice cream.
I'd like to say one thing.
Oh, Ann, sure, go ahead.
I'd like to say that I'd like to compliment the committee on getting together this, and I think we've made a good start. And I think maybe one of the next steps might be to kind of have somebody recap what happened here and have it pass out to the congregation or something. A lot of people who should be here aren't.
Or couldn't be, who wanted to.
Yeah, and Beaver Creek has in the past sometimes resisted change. And when I first heard about Sabbath for the pastor, I'm thinking, there'll be some dragging of feet for that. And I'm sure there are lots of people who think, you mean he's getting paid for doing nothing? But, you know, I think if we do this gradually and we've laid the foundation, that we can do some repairing there if there's really some problems. And Beaver Creek did not want a woman pastor when David was hired. No parts of it. Rachel was here, what, 20 how many years?
20
Never
years
got a
and she never
sabbatical.
had a sabbatical.
Yeah, never had a sabbatical. And so I think we can bring Beaver Creek to accepting this and supporting it, I hope, wholeheartedly. But that was a suggestion that maybe
Thank
we
you.
give some bullet points from what happened here.
And I think what we record
We
this
have it
on-
on tape,
Yeah.
so it can be shared.
I just really appreciate that the congregation is engaging this and talking with Gabe about it and talking with each other about it. And thank you for doing that.
I am capturing all of this as we redo the Sabbath guidelines, that your process should be one that other congregations should follow. So I've been keeping track.
Another book, there's another book in it.
Not today, though.
We need to do a Lincoln book next.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you for inviting us. It's very neat to come here and meet all of you. Maybe I can talk with some of you while we're eating ice cream. So it's neat to be here and kind of fellowship a little bit with another church of the brethren.
I love your facility. I would definitely like to have a tour of it if anybody wants to do that for me. I love it. It's beautiful here. I'm sure you all are also beautiful.
Amen and hallelujah. Thanks be to God.